That's exactly right. We can reduce that to the levels that we can pay for online advertising at pennies on the dollar. I mean, and that is one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is there are things which couldn't be done, which were not known before, like some of the. That's one aspect of it. There's another aspect of it, which is distribution. Before, the tandems of the world did non-stop, not with the same technologies that were invented over the last 8 years or 9 years or whatever. I mean, these technologies have existed forever too, but they have never been productized to the level that Amazon and Google and Yahoo did over the last several years. And what has now happened is each of them actually spent a lot of time and energy in doing these projects internally. However, now we have the dynamic that there are a whole number of new companies coming up, and the internet has grown, one more exponential level, which means that now we have like 100, 200 of those companies, which are probably going to become thousands over the next 5 years. And each of them needs all of those kinds of network and distribution algorithms and software. And the beauty is there are people who are now building it so that all of them can just make use of it, as opposed to like this is equivalent to some extent the relational databases of the 80s and 90s. We are now having a whole bunch of new technology come out. We don't understand yet. I have my own kind of belief as to who's going to win, but that's just belief, right? We'll find out. So it's a new thing happening in databases, which is exciting to me personally, because my PhD was in databases, and then I left the field to some extent to become an application guy because I didn't see enough innovation for me to justify sitting there on it. And now I come back after 20 years and look at it and go like, man, I'm back to where I was, and I just love it. And I'm okay with whoever wins, even though I'd rather it be us. So okay, so I have a survey of products. Now we were supposed to have this as a NoSQL talk, but as you can see that I'm not really a NoSQL kind of guy. It just so happens that Citrus Leaf has implemented a NoSQL API first. But what I am is a database guy. And I'm also a networking person. I'm also an operating system person. But that's all different, right? So what we have done, what I've shown here is a bunch of products which are coming out to handle the scalability problem. Not all of them are NoSQL. So the premise that somehow only NoSQL can scale is actually wrong. Kind of strange. I don't know if you expected that from me, but the premise is that you need to build scalable solutions which handle the kinds of problems that we have coming up. That's kind of the most important thing. Now, what wins, we'll find out. I have my views, and I'm sure each of you has your views.
I thought SQL inherently has scalability limitations. When I say SQL, I'm looking at passive and mind.
I disagree. The question here, the comment was that SQL inherently has scalability limitations. Technically. And this is my view. I don't believe that. I have definitely spent a lot of time doing query optimization in SQL in my early part of my career. The scalability issues that we have seen with, for example, I personally saw with respect to something like Oracle or MySQL or IBM DB2, I don't know, one of these guys not being suitable for our high write rate, throughput rate is only partly to do with SQL. It's partly it's really partly to do with SQL. The reason it's partly due to SQL is because SQL does impose a certain declarative data model, and that then by nature it will slow down a little bit any application which has a specific need. The truth is, in practice, it doesn't matter. What really matters is if you had to create a particularly complicated network data structure out of a relational table, now that is bad, right?
Here we are talking about relational rather than SQL.
Thank you. Okay, so it's fine. If you're saying relational, yeah, there are some limitations as to how you can do objects on relational and so on. As objects get more and more complex, then they're not relational anymore. Then you have a big impedance mismatch, and that I agree. Okay, but SQL itself is just a language. It's just an API.
I didn't mean.
Okay.
The word SQL in this context mapping to relational, I thought.
Got it. I'm sorry. So I misunderstood the question. So that's clarified now. So there are NoSQL solutions. Cassandra, HBase, noSql. noSql has now become Membase. I haven't changed the name. They used to call the database Membase, company noSql. Now database and company are both Membase. Redis, which has done some great things there. React Schooner is a appliance. So let me point out the kinds of various classes of things there. Right, Cassandra is a classic software-based solution, clustered. It is distributed. To some extent, very extremely scalable and so on. Written in Java, I believe. HBase is a fast transaction store built on top of the Hadoop infrastructure. HDFS by nature is not very conducive for transactions because it has been tuned for analytics. And so HBase is a way to kind of get transactions on it faster. Membase is a system which has Memcache as the basis. They have implemented certain protocols on top of it, extensions and so on, to make it clustered and scalable. React is what's the name of this language? I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. But it's I'll come back to it in a second. So that's another commercial product. All of them actually claim they're open source. MongoDB is used typically in web scale applications, and they deal with JavaScript based applications. If they have a model with which you can store JavaScript well, and then you can deal with that in your application. Redis, of course, is Memcache++ in some sense. It is persistent. It has it's a real database in some sense. It's one of the modes in which, for example, CitrusLeaf can perform. CouchDB is very interesting because they have implemented what I would call a distributed database, which is really about not just distributed. It is about disconnected operation. So you have a whole bunch of devices which all have their little databases which they check out, so to speak, and then once in a while they come back and put it back into the main system. So that's kind of the main one main way in which CouchDB runs, and that's very unique. And I think it's a great kind of way to handle that particular use case. Schooner is an appliance which basically puts they sell hardware bundled with software, which solves some of these problems. There are also SQL-only solutions. Which are actually, which claim to be the solution of choice for these new kinds of applications. One of them is well known as VoltDB, done by Mike Stonebreaker, same person who was responsible for Ingress and Postgres. Illustra, is a very famous database researcher product. He's like a luminary who's done a lot of work there. I think he used to be at Berkeley, now he's at MIT. Clustrix is an appliance which basically does SQL, clustered SQL, which kind of scales indefinitely, and it's supposed to be really fast. MySQL cluster has been around for a while, running on top of NDB. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to actually install it and run it, but it has been very challenging to actually figure out because of I think it's just not well used enough to have enough documentation and so on. And support. RethinkDB is trying to extend MySQL with flash storage. As you noticed, I didn't talk about CitrusLeaf, but CitrusLeaf, I don't want to spend too much time on it. We are basically currently a noSql solution, but we have various. I can talk a little bit more about it in the next slide. So. It is the same definition I have seen the noSql groups use, and we were one of the first. We were one of the sponsors of the first noSql conference, so I think I have some authority to speak on it. noSql is essentially a way to remove some of the problems one sees with legacy databases, and actually makes so-called SQL scalable. That is the way they see it. So SQL as a language is not supposed